Season 1 of the Vampire Diaries introduces the siblings Elena and Jeremy Gilbert from the small town of Mystic Falls. They are both grieving the recent death of their parents in a car accident, which Elena was a part of, but mysteriously saved from the wreckage. The siblings now live with their young aunt Jenna Sommers, who is trying to get her own life together while suddenly responsible for 2 teenagers. As the pair return to high school for the start of the new year, Elena becomes immediately interested in the new student Stefan Salvatore. This frustrates both Elena's quarterback ex-boyfriend Matt and her friend Caroline, who is also attracted to Stefan. Despite this typical high school drama, Elena's best friend Bonnie encourages her to pursue a relationship with Stefan. But what no one in Mystic Falls knows is that Stefan is secretly a vampire. Stefan wants to live a normal life like a regular high schooler and therefore refuses to feed on humans. But his estranged brother Damon revels in being a vampire, feeding on humans to gain more power. Stefan and Damon were born in the 1800s, and as humans they both fell in love with a vampire named Catherine Pierce. Their father was ashamed of his son's relationship and led the townspeople to trap Catherine and the town's other vampires in an eternal tomb before killing his sons. Stefan survived thanks to being turned into a vampire, and saved Damon by forcing him to turn into a vampire too. Seeing no use for living now that Catherine was gone, Damon professes an undying feud with Stefan for damning him to an eternal life without his true love. And now in the present, Stefan and Damon both become interested in Elena, due to her being an identical doppelganger and descendant of Catherine, while Damon remains determined to find a way to open Catherine's tomb. Meanwhile, Jeremy falls in love with Matt's sister Vicki, who breaks up with her jock boyfriend Tyler to be with him. When Damon feeds on Vicki and turns her into a vampire, Vicki can't control her bloodlust, forcing Stefan to kill her to save the unaware Jeremy. Jeremy then begins dating another vampire named Anna, and Jenna begins dating the new high school history teacher Alaric, who is secretly a vampire hunter, wanting to avenge his wife Isabel after she was murdered by Damon. Meanwhile, Bonnie discovers from her grandmother that she is in fact a witch. The duo use their magic to help open the town's tomb, but Damon is devastated to discover that Catherine was never actually locked inside, and due to overexertion, Bonnie's grandmother dies. As Elena and Stefan grow closer, Stefan reveals that he was the one who saved Elena from the crash that killed her parents. Stefan also reveals that after noticing Elena's resemblance to Catherine, he looked into her past and discovered that she was secretly adopted. Jenna helps Elena discover information about her birth parents, finding out that Elena's mother is actually Alaric's late wife Isabel. Alaric then discovers that Isabel never actually died, but had instead become obsessed with vampires and convinced Damon to turn her into one. Alaric attacks Damon, but is killed as a result. Fortunately, a Gilbert family ring given to Alaric by Isabel saves his life, as the wearer can't be killed by anything supernatural. Many of the tomb vampires, including a vampire named Frederick, want to enact revenge on the town for trapping them for over a century. Elena helps Stefan and Damon defeat Frederick, but Stefan is seriously injured in the process. Elena allows Stefan to drink her blood to heal himself, leading him to fall into a blood addiction. As Elena and Damon help Stefan kick his newfound addiction, they grow closer together and begin to develop romantic feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Elena and Jeremy's uncle John arrives in Mystic Falls, though Elena soon learns that he is in fact her biological father. John is a member of the town's Founders Council, whose secret mission is to protect Mystic Falls from vampires. Isabel then comes to town working with John to kill all vampires to protect their daughter. In their grand scheme, John acquires an object known as the Gilbert device, which can incapacitate all supernatural beings in the area. As the season comes to a close, the remaining tomb vampires plan on assaulting the town during a Founders Day celebration, where John and Isabel plan on using the Gilbert device to kill them all. After activating the device, every vampire in town is affected by its power, and mysteriously so are Tyler and his father, Mayor Lockwood. This causes Tyler to get into a car crash with his friends, the newly dating couple Matt and Caroline, leaving Caroline critically injured. John and Isabel round up all of the vampires, resulting in the death of Jeremy's girlfriend Anna and the non-vampire mayor Lockwood. Alaric then arrives to help his former rival Damon fight back against his villainous ex-wife and save the vampires. In the end, Damon shares a kiss with Elena, who is secretly his long-lost love Katherine. Katherine then stabs John, just as the real Elena arrives to discover the aftermath. In Season 2 of The Vampire Diaries, Elena reaches her estranged father in time to save his life. Katherine confronts Damon, telling him she will always love Stefan more. When Damon turns to Elena for comfort, she confesses that she too will always love Stefan. To complicate the romances even further, Katherine announces her desire to have Stefan all to herself, and threatens Elena's life if Stefan doesn't break up with her. Meanwhile, Damon gives Caroline some of his blood to help her heal from her injury sustained in her car crash. Despite Damon, Katherine turns Caroline into a vampire. Stefan agrees to train Caroline in her new abilities and cravings, though she decides to break up with Matt to protect him from her new bloodlust. When Caroline's mother, Sheriff Forbes, discovers that her daughter is now a vampire, she disowns her. Katherine then warns Elena about Klaus, an original vampire and also a hybrid werewolf, who wants to break a curse placed upon him by his stepfather centuries prior, which forced his werewolf abilities to remain dormant. Now Klaus wants to reach his full power and create a hybrid army. To break his curse, he would need to sacrifice a doppelganger, a vampire, and a werewolf. Centuries ago, Katherine turned herself into a vampire to avoid being used by Klaus as the required doppelganger sacrifice. But now he would be coming to Mystic Falls for Elena. Also arriving in town is Elijah, Klaus's half-brother and fellow original vampire, who wants to kill Klaus for murdering his werewolf-hating family. Elijah plans on letting Klaus sacrifice Elena to lift his curse, which would briefly make Klaus mortal, allowing Elijah to kill his half-brother. Elsewhere, Tyler's uncle Mason arrives in town to console him after his father's death. Tyler discovers that his uncle is a werewolf and that he too contains the werewolf curse, which will transform him after he makes his first kill. Mason is secretly working with Katherine, but unbeknownst to him, he is being set up as Klaus's needed vampire sacrifice. When Damon kills Mason, Katherine forces Tyler into committing his first kill, fully turning him into a werewolf. Tyler and Caroline bond over their newfound transformations and powers, and begin to develop romantic feelings for each other, but neither act on them due to their friendship with Matt. To escape his feelings, Tyler leaves town to train with Mason's werewolf friend Jules. As Elena and her allies search for a way to defeat Klaus, Elijah reveals that hybrids can only be killed by a witch, and that the death must occur during his transformation into a werewolf. The magical witch Bonnie begins searching for a spell she can use to defeat Klaus, and is aided in her investigation by Jeremy, leading to the two developing romantic feelings for each other. As Klaus attempts to complete his ritual, he captures Caroline and Tyler to use as his vampire and werewolf sacrifices. Damon rescues them, but Tyler, unable to control his newfound werewolf abilities, bites Damon. Klaus then turns Elena's Aunt Jenna into a vampire to use as a sacrifice, alongside Jules as the werewolf sacrifice. Bonnie tethers Elena's soul to her father John's, and Klaus then uses her as the final sacrifice needed in his ritual. Bonnie then casts the spell which would allow Klaus to be killed, but Elijah saves him after Klaus reveals he can bring Elijah to his not actually dead family. Bonnie's tethering spell brings Elena back to life, but John is killed as a result. In the aftermath, Elena and Alaric mourn the loss of Jenna. Klaus, now with his full werewolf abilities, reveals he tricked Elijah and incapacitates him with a special dagger, the only tool powerful enough to defeat an original. Damon then discovers that he will soon die, as the bite he received from the werewolf Tyler is lethal to vampires. Klaus reveals that his hybrid blood can save Damon's life, but will only give it if Stefan agrees to be his loyal assistant. And so Stefan pledges his loyalty to the villainous Klaus, and the duo leave Mystic Falls together. Damon is saved by Klaus's blood, and he shares a kiss with Elena. As the season comes to a close, the anti-vampire Sheriff Forbes tries to shoot Damon, but accidentally kills Jeremy instead. Bonnie takes her love to a group of old witches who bring him back to life, but warn of serious consequences. And those consequences begin to immediately manifest when Jeremy begins seeing the ghosts of his dead girlfriends Anna and Vicki. In Season 3 of the Vampire Diaries, Klaus and Stefan continue their hunt for vampires so that Klaus can create his army of hybrids. Unfortunately for Klaus, every attempt to create a new hybrid fails. All the while, Elena and Damon attempt to bring Stefan home and remove him from Klaus's control. Stefan kills many people working alongside Klaus, leading to Damon losing hope that his brother can ever be redeemed. On their mission, Klaus reveals to Stefan that they had actually become best friends in the 1920s, and Stefan fell in love with Klaus's half-sister and fellow original vampire Rebecca. To protect his best friend and sister from his vampire-hating father, Klaus compelled Stefan to forget them and then stabbed Rebecca with a magical dagger that incapacitates originals until it is removed. In the present, Klaus restores Stefan's memories and removes the dagger from Rebecca, allowing the trio to reunite to discover the truth behind Klaus's inability to create new hybrids. They return to Mystic Falls, where Klaus discovers that he needs the doppelganger's blood to create hybrids. And so Klaus kills Tyler, forcing Elena to help him save Tyler's life by turning him into a hybrid, then supplying Klaus with more of her blood so that he can further expand his army. And now, because Tyler was turned into a hybrid by Klaus, Tyler is forced to be forever loyal to him. As Tyler and Caroline finally begin to date, Klaus also begins to develop romantic feelings for Caroline. To defeat Klaus, Katherine, Damon, and Jeremy, who can now communicate with the dead, find and release Klaus's eternally imprisoned father Michael, who despite being an original vampire, wants to see all vampires dead. Michael arrives in Mystic Falls with a white oak stake, the only weapon that can permanently kill an original vampire. Despite Michael's best efforts, Klaus manages to kill his father. Fortunately, Stefan is able to free himself from Klaus is compelling and orders Klaus to stand down, or else Stefan will turn Elena into a vampire, ruining Klaus's ability to use Elena's blood to create his hybrid army. Klaus complies with Stefan's demands, but Elena is left devastated by her former lover's actions. With Stefan no longer under Klaus's influence, Damon pledges to help his brother once again contain his bloodlust and become the hero he once was. Through it all, Elena and Damon officially begin dating. In a further attempt to defeat Klaus, the residents of Mystic Falls release his entire imprisoned Michelson family, including Rebecca, Elijah, and the original's matriarch Esther. With all of the originals now free, the vampire-hating Esther plots to bring her entire family together and kill them all. Meanwhile, members of the Founders Council begin to be murdered by a mysterious killer. When Caroline's staunchly anti-vampire father is mortally wounded in the attacks, he refuses to allow himself to be turned into a vampire to save his life. Caroline's mother, Sheriff Liz Forbes, finally accepts and reconciles with her vampire daughter. Alaric soon discovers that he is in fact the serial killer, as his Gilbert ring has infected him with an uncontrollable darkness. As Alaric tries to cure himself of the darkness, he begins dating a doctor named Meredith, who uses vampire blood to help cure her patients. As the originals continue to antagonize the town, Elena and her allies manage to kill one of the Michelson siblings, Finn. This leads the group to discovering that if an original dies, their entire sired bloodline also dies. This was all a part of Esther's master plan, where killing her family would lead to the deaths of every single vampire in existence. And due to Klaus being the vampire ancestor of Damon, Stefan, Tyler, and Caroline, they could no longer kill him without also sacrificing themselves. To aid in her plot to kill all vampires, Esther manipulates the Dark Alaric to join her cause. She turns Alaric into an original vampire and magically links his life with Elena's, meaning if one of them dies, so does the other. Alaric manages to break through his dark possession long enough to kill Esther once and for all, but the Dark Alaric still lives to complete her master plan. In order to save all vampires, Klaus wants to kill Elena in order for Alaric to die, while Damon and Stefan are willing to risk everything to keep their love Elena alive. Dark Alaric reveals the identities of all of the vampires in Mystic Falls to the town, then kills Klaus with a white oak stake, meaning all of his vampire descendants, including Damon, Stefan, Caroline, and Tyler would soon die. Elena bids an emotional goodbye to Damon, but shockingly no one dies. Bonnie then reveals that she had secretly used magic to reincarnate Klaus into Tyler's body. As the season comes to a close, in an effort to defeat Dark Alaric, Elena sacrifices herself. Dark Alaric dies, and the original benevolent Alaric is able to say goodbye to Jeremy and move on peacefully to the afterlife. Damon and Stefan mourn the death of their lover, but are shocked to discover that Meredith had used vampire blood on Elena, resurrecting her as a vampire. In season 4 of The Vampire Diaries, Stefan tries to teach Elena how to be a vampire and only feed on animal blood. But Elena struggles to adapt to this new way of life and continues to crave human blood. Seeing Stefan's attempts as futile, Damon steps in to teach Elena how to be a vampire his way, leading to Elena once again developing feelings for him. Elena then discovers that the vampire blood used to save her life came from Damon, meaning she was sired to him. The pair are conflicted over whether Elena's feelings for Damon are real or simply the result of their sire bond. Meanwhile, Bonnie uses dark magic to return Klaus to his own body. Rebecca, furious at her brother for always choosing his hybrid army over his actual family, destroys Klaus's supply of Elena's blood. An angry Klaus disowns Rebecca, leading her on a journey of her own self-discovery. She begins to become a better person and eventually develops romantic feelings for Matt. Elsewhere in Mystic Falls, an occult professor named Shane begins training Bonnie in a dark magic called Expression. Shane secretly manipulates the new leader of the Founders Council to sacrifice himself and massacre the rest of the council. Then, as Tyler attempts to liberate Klaus's army of hybrids, Klaus kills them all in an act of petty revenge against Tyler. These two massacres are an effort to create an Expression Triangle, a dark magic ritual that would be powerful enough to lift the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead, resurrecting every supernatural being that had ever died. Following the massacres, the vampire hunter Connor arrives in town to investigate the deaths and kill the town's vampires. Klaus warns that Connor is a member of the Five, a group of supernatural vampire hunters whose crusade against vampires dates back centuries. When Elena kills Connor, she is given a curse that drives her mad. The only way for the curse to be lifted is for a new hunter to replenish the ranks of the Five. And so Jeremy chooses to lift the curse on his sister by turning himself into a supernatural vampire hunter. Jeremy develops a compulsion for killing vampires and discovers that the more vampires he kills, the more a magical tattoo reveals itself on his body, which would help lead to the cure for vampirism. Klaus and Stefan team up to find the cure, as Klaus wants to use it on Elena, allowing him to once again use her doppelganger blood to create more hybrids. Stefan wants to use the cure for Elena and himself, allowing them to grow old together as humans. Stefan then begins turning criminals into vampires for Jeremy to kill and complete his tattoo. Once Jeremy's tattoo is complete, Shane reveals to the group that he knows the location of the cure, which is buried with a being named Silas, a powerful witch and the world's first immortal being. Shane leads the group to an island to find Silas and the cure. Unfortunately, once the group reaches the island, they realize that the cure is only enough for one person. Katherine arrives on the island and helps Silas feed on Jeremy to resurrect the immortal witch. But Silas completely drains Jeremy and kills him. Katherine then steals the cure for herself as Elena and her friends mourn the death of Jeremy. Shane is left for dead by Stefan for his orchestrations of the various massacres. As the group return to Mystic Falls, the resurrected Silas begins posing as various people to manipulate the others into doing his bidding. Unaware that Shane is dead, Bonnie is tricked by Silas posing as the professor to massacre a group of witches, finally completing the Expression Triangle. Bonnie believes these deaths served a greater good, as they would lead to all supernatural beings, including the witches and her dead lover Jeremy, being resurrected from the other side. With the Expression Triangle now complete, Bonnie lifts the veil between the living and the dead, resurrecting every supernatural being, including Jeremy, Alaric, and Bonnie's grandmother Grams. Bonnie then turns on the villainous Silas and kills him by turning him to stone. Despite the many happy reunions, Grams warns Bonnie that she must close the veil and send everyone back to the afterlife, as that is what nature intends. Bonnie reluctantly agrees, but first casts a dark magic spell on Jeremy to make her lover's resurrection permanent. Despite the spell working on Jeremy, Bonnie is killed in the process. The resurrected villainous supernatural beings, including vampires and former members of the Five, descend on the citizens of Mystic Falls to enact their revenge. The ghost of Bonnie then says goodbye to Jeremy and closes the veil, sending every undead being back to the other side. With Mystic Falls saved, Elena professes her love for Damon and the two share a kiss. Klaus bids farewell to Caroline and wishes her luck in her burgeoning relationship with Tyler. Klaus, Elijah, and Rebecca then travel to New Orleans to rebuild their originals family together. As the season comes to a close, Elena graduates high school before being attacked by Katherine, who wants revenge for Elena having the life that Katherine always desired. To save herself, Elena forces Katherine to take the cure, turning her into a human. With Elena choosing to be with Damon, Stefan chooses to leave town and dispose of Silas's frozen body. Unfortunately, following Bonnie's death, Silas is unfrozen. The immortal being reveals himself to be a doppelganger of Stefan, then locks up the real Stefan and throws him to the bottom of the town's lake and leaves him to drown. Season 1 of the originals follows the complicated anti-hero Klaus Mikaelson, who is not only a member of the original vampire family, but also a supernatural hybrid, possessing the powers of both a vampire and a werewolf. Centuries after being banished from the home his family built and ruled, Klaus and his original vampire half-siblings Elijah and Rebecca return to New Orleans to reclaim the throne by any means necessary. Upon his return, Klaus discovers that his former surrogate son and vampire protege Marcel now rules the supernatural residence as king of the French Quarter, and to protect his position, he kills any witch who practices magic. And so, Klaus is forced into battle with his former ally. Meanwhile, the werewolf Haley Marshall arrives in New Orleans to seek the guidance of the witch Sophie Devereaux to help learn more about her long-lost family. Instead, she kidnaps Haley for her own plot in bringing down the power-hungry Marcel. Sophie then reveals to Klaus that Haley has become pregnant with his child following a previous one-night stand. Sophie threatens Haley's life to force Klaus into helping the witches defeat Marcel and rid him from New Orleans for good. Unbeknownst to Klaus, Marcel has a good reason to be anti-witch, as he is secretly harboring an extremely powerful young witch named Davina Claire. Davina was forced by the local coven to sacrifice herself alongside 3 other young witches in an act known as the Harvest Ritual. The ritual must occur every 3 centuries to appease the coven's ancestors and retain their magic. Marcel and Sophie stopped the ritual, saving Davina, but failed to save the other innocent girls, including Sophie's niece Monique. Having survived the ritual, Davina absorbed the power of the sacrificed girls, making her more powerful than the other witches of the coven. Now the coven needs to find Davina and sacrifice her to complete the ritual, or they would all lose their magic. And Sophie now wants to find and sacrifice Davina in the hopes that the ritual's completion will resurrect all of the sacrifices, including Monique. And so Marcel now keeps Davina under his strict and overbearing care to ensure her safety. When Davina attempts to escape to live the life of a normal teenager, Klaus reluctantly helps his former protege by murdering Davina's human boyfriend Tim to ensure she returns to Marcel's protection. Elsewhere, Rebecca and Marcel have long harbored a love for each other and finally act on it, leading Rebecca to betray her brother to side with his rival. As Rebecca, Marcel, and his army of vampires attack Klaus to rid the city of him once and for all, Klaus fights them off, slaughtering many of Marcel's loyal allies and forcing him to submit to Klaus's leadership. In the end, Klaus and Marcel agree to put all of their past issues aside and reconcile, with Klaus offering for Marcel to serve alongside him as an equal. Marcel accepts Klaus's offer and breaks off his relationship with Rebecca. Despite being reconciled as friends, Klaus and Marcel find themselves as the objects of desire for the human Camille, who is shocked to discover that both of her would-be lovers are in fact immortal vampires. Camille is even more shocked to discover that her recently deceased uncle has left her a secret room filled with objects containing dark magic. Sophie then digs up the bones of Elijah's long-dead witch lover Celeste to absorb her power and use it to complete the harvest ritual. To Sophie's surprise, the sacrifice of Davina completes the ritual, but does not resurrect the sacrificial witches, as this was all a ruse by the villainous Celeste, who is resurrected alongside fellow elder witches Papatunde, Genevieve, and Bastiana. Celeste then sacrifices Papatunde to absorb his powers, which in turn resurrects Monique. Marcel realizes that to bring back Davina and the other sacrificed witches, Celeste and her fellow elders must die. Sophie tries to flee town with her niece, but Monique kills her to stay with Celeste and fight for a witch supremacy. Meanwhile, Haley's old werewolf friend Tyler Lockwood arrives in New Orleans to introduce her to a group of off-the-grid werewolves living in the bayou. Haley discovers that her extended werewolf family is amongst the group, but they have magically had their curse reversed, meaning they can only take their human form during a full moon. Haley confronts Celeste and forces her to reverse the curse again, allowing the werewolves to become human. During this time, Elijah stays by Haley's side to act as her protector. All the while, he begins to fall in love with her. Meanwhile, Rebecca is furious that Klaus will not allow her to be with Marcel, so she turns on her brother once again. Marcel kills the elder witch Bastiana, which resurrects Davina. Marcel and Rebecca then task Davina with casting a cloaking spell on them so that Klaus can never find them. Celeste then traps Klaus, Rebecca, and Elijah together in a cemetery, hoping the dysfunctional family will kill each other. Instead, Elijah reluctantly kills his former love and the siblings reconcile. Klaus finally gives Rebecca his blessing to leave New Orleans and live a life with Marcel. Unfortunately, as Rebecca bids her siblings farewell, Marcel chooses to stay behind to rebuild the vampire population in the French Quarter. With their enemies seemingly defeated, Klaus and Elijah take back control of the French Quarter and forge alliances between vampires, werewolves, witches, and humans. But Marcel and his loyal allies hate werewolves whose bites are deadly to vampires. And the werewolves Francesca and Oliver stage attacks against their own people to frame the vampires and reignite the war between the two species. As the vampires and werewolves escalate their war, the witches use the chaos to make moves of their own. As Haley finally gives birth to a baby girl named Hope, Monique kidnaps the baby and then murders Haley. Thankfully, Haley is resurrected due to Hope's blood turning her into a vampire-werewolf hybrid. Haley then joins Klaus and Elijah to defeat the witches and rescue her child. As the witches prepare to sacrifice Hope in an attempt to fulfill a mysterious oath to their ancestors, Davina begins having visions of Michael, the deceased evil stepfather of Klaus and the vampire father of Rebecca and Elijah. Michael convinces Davina to resurrect him to be used as a weapon against Klaus. Before Hope can be sacrificed, Marcel arrives to help his frenemy Klaus defeat the witches and save the baby. Haley then takes revenge on the final living elder witch Genevieve for the plot to sacrifice Hope. Fearing the witches will never stop hunting the baby, Klaus and Haley reluctantly fake their child's death and secretly send her to live under the protection of Rebecca. As the season comes to a close, the death of Genevieve resurrects the final sacrificed witch, Cassie. Unfortunately, the young witch is in fact possessed by the Michelson siblings' deceased and evil witch mother, Esther. In season 5 of the Vampire Diaries, Damon and Elena race to rescue Stefan, only to realize that he has already escaped. Stefan has been captured by Tessa, a powerful witch that thousands of years ago fell in love with Silas. Silas had instead loved a human named Amara, Elena and Katherine's original doppelganger ancestor. Silas seduced Tessa in order for her to craft an immortality potion that Silas could use to live with Amara forever. Upon discovering Silas's betrayal, Tessa created the cure for vampirism, killed Amara, and sealed Silas in his tomb. Tessa then spent the next 200 years living in the other side, a place she created for all supernatural beings to go after they die. Tessa returned to the land of the living after Bonnie lifted the veil, and now wants to kill Silas once and for all, trapping him in the other side with her forever. Silas discovers that his long-lost love Amara has been secretly kept alive by Tessa and turned into an anchor, which holds the other side together. Silas wants to kill Amara, destroying the other side, and then sacrifice himself to be with her in the afterlife together. Damon, Jeremy, and Elena are then forced to team up with Tessa to bring Bonnie back to life and serve as the new anchor for for the other side, before Silas can kill Amara and destroy it. With Bonnie serving as the anchor, Tessa would be able to kill Silas and damn him to an eternity in the other side with her, forever separated from Amara. Silas arrives to thwart their plan and engages in a fight with Stefan. Stefan stabs Silas, mortally wounding him. As Silas and Amara both prepare to die and enter the afterlife together, Tessa completes the ritual to bring Bonnie back to life and make her the new anchor, meaning the other side remains intact. Amara dies and enters the afterlife, while Silas dies and enters the other side. Tessa then voluntarily sends herself to the other side to spend eternity with her unrequited love. Meanwhile, Elena and Caroline begin attending Whitmore College. When Klaus briefly returns to Mystic Falls and sleeps with Caroline, a devastated Tyler ends their relationship for good. Elena and Caroline then discover that their biology professor Wes Maxfield is a part of a secret organization known as Augustine, which conducts secret experiments on vampires. Wes captures Damon and Elena to advance his research, which he reveals is the development of the Ripper virus, which could force vampires to feed on other vampires instead of humans. Damon and Elena escape Wes, and Damon is reunited with his best friend Enzo, a fellow Augustine vampire test subject that Damon was forced to leave for dead decades prior. Damon teams back up with Enzo to hunt down Augustine members and enact more revenge. During this mission, Damon is injected with the Ripper virus, turning him against all of his loved ones. When Wes refuses to give him the cure, Damon kills him. Meanwhile, a magical vampire named Nadia arrives in Mystic Falls and reveals that she is Katherine's long-lost daughter. Nadia is a traveler, a group of witches who seek immortality and have no regard for adhering to the laws of nature. This led to a curse being placed on them by the other witches, condemning travelers to never being able to gather together in their own bodies. Nadia explains to Katherine that she could regain her immortality by placing her spirit in another body like a traveler, and so Katherine travels into Elena's body and poses as her, with everyone thinking that the real Katherine has died. Katherine as Elena then rekindles her past romance with Stefan. When Elena's friends discover Katherine's scheme, Nadia intervenes to stop them from bringing back Elena. Tyler confronts Nadia and is forced to bite her to save his friends. As the vampire Nadia begins dying from the werewolf bite, Katherine chooses to come to her daughter's side to say goodbye. Nadia dies peacefully, and Stefan then stabs Katherine, killing her and bringing back Elena. As Katherine's spirit prepares to pass through Bonnie to the other side, she reveals that she injected herself with the Ripper virus, which would now infect Elena. Before Katherine can pass through Bonnie, she is instead dragged to hell. To help save Elena and Damon from the Ripper virus, Enzo meets with a group of travelers who have obtained a cure. Elena and Damon are cured in exchange for the doppelganger blood of Elena and Stefan. The travelers use the blood in a ritual to sacrifice themselves and pass through Bonnie to the other side. This many people passing through Bonnie at once pains and weakens her, temporarily lifting the veil to the other side and allowing the travelers' leader Marcos to escape to the land of the living. This causes the other side to begin collapsing into an oblivion that would not only kill Bonnie, but every being that resides in the other side. The spirits of the travelers begin possessing the bodies of the inhabitants of Mystic Falls, and under the leadership of Marcos, begin plotting to use doppelganger blood to permanently rid the town of all magic and supernatural beings, allowing the travelers to take Mystic Falls for themselves. As the travelers cast their spell, the supernatural residents flee town to retain their powers and formulate a plan to save Mystic Falls. Tyler becomes possessed by a traveler and murders Stefan, sending his spirit to the collapsing other side. As Tyler fights for control of his body, Marcos forces him across the spell's borders, removing his supernatural abilities, and then murders him. Bonnie has become weak and magicless and turns to twin witches Liv and Luke for help in casting a resurrection spell that could save their friends from the other side. When Liv first refuses, Caroline murders Luke to force Liv into cooperating. Bonnie, despite knowing this would kill her, helps devise a plan to kill all of the travelers once again, weakening Bonnie's anchor and allowing all of their friends to escape the other side, just like Marcos had. As the group lure the travelers into the Mystic Falls grill to blow it it up, the other side continues to crumble and begins pulling many of its inhabitants, including Silas, into oblivion. Damon and Elena sacrifice themselves to blow up the grill, sending themselves and all of the travelers to the other side. With Bonnie weakened, Damon and Elena help their deceased friends Stefan, Luke, Tyler, and Alaric to escape the crumbling other side. Seeing his sister would die if she continued the resurrection spell, Luke forces Liv to stop the spell just before Damon can successfully escape. As their friends and family mourn them, Bonnie and Damon are pulled into oblivion. In Season 2 of the originals, Klaus is determined to defeat his enemies to allow himself to reunite with his daughter Hope. But that would be easier said than done with his family now back in the French Quarter. Klaus and Elijah's mother Esther is a witch who hates vampires and wants to rid the world of them. She has resurrected the deceased Michelson siblings Cole and Finn into the bodies of a pair of witches, transfers her own soul into a new witch body, and wants to put the souls of Klaus, Elijah, and Rebecca into mortal bodies of their own to rid them of their vampirism. Centuries ago, Esther had fertility issues and sought the help of her witch sister Dahlia. Dahlia helped Esther conceive a family in exchange for the firstborn child of every generation of Michelson children. And so Esther was forced to sacrifice her and Michael's firstborn child Freya, and now Esther and her coven must find and sacrifice Klaus's firstborn Hope to appease Dahlia, or else Dahlia will kill all of the Michelsons. Haley begins leading the werewolves in her pack and discovers that she has been promised from birth to marry the wolf pack's alpha Jackson. As they lead their wolves together, including a new pack led by a werewolf named Aiden, the two develop feelings for each other. Haley agrees to complete the werewolf marriage unification ceremony with Jackson, as it would then impart her hybrid strength to their entire merged wolf pack, which Haley hopes will be strong enough to protect Hope from the witches and allow her to return home. Elijah gives his blessing and shares an emotional and romantic goodbye with Haley. With the werewolves thriving, Marcel convinces Elijah to help him rebuild the vampire community in the French Quarter and tasks him with mentoring the new vampire Gia. Seeing Haley and Jackson begin to genuinely fall in love, Elijah begins to move on and develops his own new romance with Gia. Also serving alongside Marcel is his loyal right-hand man Josh, who begins a secret forbidden romance with the werewolf Aiden. Meanwhile, Davina forces the resurrected Michael to train her on how to fight, hoping to use her new skills to enact revenge on Klaus for murdering her first love Tim. After Michael manages to escape from Davina, Cole offers to become her new mentor, and the two begin to fall in love with each other. In their battle against Esther, Klaus and his allies convince Cole to join their cause, though Finn remains loyal to his mother, fearing the ultimate wrath of Dahlia. As Esther captures Camille and attempts to use her for Rebecca's new mortal body, Klaus, Davina, and Cole arrive to intervene. Klaus kills his mother and Davina saves Camille, but the duplicitous Cole places Rebecca's soul into the body of Eva Sinclair, a witch imprisoned in a supernatural asylum. Klaus then forces his mother to drink vampire blood, leaving her with the decision of dying alongside her morals or turning into the thing she hates most. When Esther chooses to become a vampire, Finn calls her a hypocrite and abandons her to continue the mission to sacrifice Hope to Dahlia and defeat Klaus to rule the French Quarter himself. As Rebecca tries to escape the asylum, she meets her long-lost eldest sister, the powerful witch Freya. Thought to have died thousands of years ago, Freya has actually been cursed by Dahlia to only wake for 1 year at a time, once every century. Freya and Rebecca escape the asylum together, and the sisters return to New Orleans. As Finn fights his way to a witch supremacy in the French Quarter, he permanently traps Cole in his mortal body and curses him to die. This inspires Klaus to reconcile with his younger brother, and Cole dies, finally feeling the love of his siblings. Freya then proves her loyalty to her siblings by trapping Finn's soul in her magical necklace, allowing the witch he was inhabiting, Vincent, to take back control of his body, and to enact revenge on her mother for abandoning her to Dahlia as an infant. Freya finds and murders the vampire Esther. Freya warns them all that Dahlia will soon arrive to claim Hope for herself. As Dahlia arrives in the French Quarter, Klaus finds and kills his stepfather Michael once and for all to allow Davina to use his ashes to craft a magical blade that can defeat his powerful witch aunt. Meanwhile, Rebecca kills her witch body Eva to return to her original vampire body to help defeat Dahlia. As Josh and Aiden prepare to run away away together to continue their forbidden love and peace, Dahlia kills Aiden and frames Klaus in an attempt to turn his allies against him. Haley believes that the real danger to Hope is Klaus's endless list of enemies, and so she runs away with her daughter and Jackson to rid Klaus from their lives for good. Dahlia tells Klaus that as a first-generation vampire-werewolf witch hybrid, Hope will become powerful enough to destroy the world. She will need Dahlia to help train her, with Klaus by her side raising her. And so, Klaus aligns with Dahlia and turns against his family. As the newly aligned duo go to battle against Elijah, Rebecca, Freya, and the others, Klaus proves his newfound villainy by murdering Elijah's new love Gia, fighting his own loyal human ally Camille, and helps Dahlia recurse Haley and her wolf pack, only allowing them to take their human form during a full moon. Despite his series of betrayals, this is all a part of Klaus's plan to earn Dahlia's trust. He convinces her to magically link themselves so that Dahlia can draw energy from him, but Klaus then stabs himself with the magical dagger, rendering them both unconscious. With Dahlia then incapacitated, Elijah, Rebecca, Camille, and Freya have a chance to resurrect Esther, as her blood is the final ingredient needed to defeat Dahlia. With some help from Vincent, Davina convinces the 9 local witch covens to name her as their regent, allowing her the one-time use of their combined powers to resurrect her lover Cole. Unfortunately for Davina, Elijah and his allies trick her into resurrecting Esther instead. The resurrected Esther redeems herself in the eyes of her children by sacrificing herself to kill Dahlia once and for all. As the season comes to a close, Elijah abandons Klaus for all of the monstrous acts he committed to defeat Dahlia. Camille realizes her true love for Klaus despite his actions. Freya helped Rebecca return to the mortal body of Eva so that she can leave town once again and live a normal life. Klaus leaves control of the French Quarter to Marcel so that he can focus on raising his daughter in peace. And with Haley still cursed to be a wolf for the majority of her existence, she meets with Elijah on a full moon and encourages him to return to Klaus's side to help raise Hope and teach her what a true hero really looks like. In Season 6 of the Vampire Diaries, the Traveler's spell is still active over Mystic Falls, meaning that none of the supernatural beings can enter without reverting to their pre-powered states. Outside of town, Elena, Caroline, Luke, Liv, and Tyler return to Whitmore College, where the resurrected Alaric is now a professor. Romance quickly blossoms at Whitmore as Alaric begins dating a fellow professor named Jo, and Tyler begins dating Liv. As Elena searches for a way to bring Damon and Bonnie back from the destroyed other side, Caroline searches for a way to break the Traveler's spell on Mystic Falls. Meanwhile, Stefan has given up on both missions and now lives a new peaceful life in Savannah. Enzo is furious that Stefan has given up on rescuing Damon and vows to ruin Stefan's life for revenge. Elsewhere, Damon and Bonnie find themselves in a world resembling an abandoned Mystic Falls in 1994, cursed to repeat the same day over and over again. Bonnie, who has lost her magical powers, searches for a way to get them back so that she and Damon can return to the real world. Eventually, Damon and Bonnie find a fellow trapped being named Kai, who helps Bonnie regain her magic. Before the trio can escape together, Damon and Bonnie discover that Kai is a siphoner, a witch who can't generate his own magic but can absorb magic from others. Kai was a part of a family from the Gemini Coven of Witches, and is actually the twin brother of Jo. Gemini twins are magical beings that, after coming of age, are forced to perform a merge ritual, where the more powerful twin absorbs the other along with their powers, after which they are made the new leader of the Gemini Coven. Fearing Kai's power and unstable nature as a siphoner, his parents instead had many more children, including another set of twins, Luke and Liv, to one day complete the merge ritual and lead the Coven instead. Furious for being passed over as leader, Kai attacked his family, slaughtering them all on this day in 1994, except for Jo, who managed to save the infant Luke and Liv. The Gemini Coven fought back against Kai and created this prison world to confine him for eternity. Realizing that Kai is too dangerous to allow to escape, Bonnie sends Damon back to life and leaves herself behind to ensure Kai remains imprisoned. Meanwhile, Matt remains in Mystic Falls and discovers that a resident named Trip is hunting vampires and bringing them across the town's magical border, removing their vampirism so he can murder them. Tripp captures Enzo and Damon, but just before bringing them across the border, Alaric arrives to save them. Alaric is forced over the border where he loses his vampirism and begins to die as a human. Fortunately, Jo arrives and saves his life. Enzo then turns Tripp into a vampire and forces him to enter Mystic Falls, killing him in an act of ironic revenge. Meanwhile, Kai finds a way to escape the prison world on his own, leaving Bonnie trapped and alone. The villainous Siphoner absorbs the traveler's magical barrier around Mystic Falls, allowing all of the supernatural beings to return home once again. As Kai captures his twin Jo and forces her to begin the merging ritual with him, Luke intervenes to save his sister and complete the merge in her place. Kai absorbs Luke, killing him, but then begins to feel some of his younger brother's humanity, leading to him having remorse over his actions. Alaric then proposes to Jo, who discovers that she is pregnant with his twins. Meanwhile, Sheriff Forbes tragically dies of a brain tumor. As Caroline mourns her mother, Stefan comforts her and the two fall in love. Sheriff Forbes' death inspires Matt to join the police force. And as Jeremy graduates high school, he decides to leave Mystic Falls and forge his own path, hunting villainous vampires across the country. Back in the prison world, Bonnie finally discovers a way to escape on her own. But on her journey, she encounters Damon and Stefan's mother, Lily. Lily Salvatore had been presumed dead, but had actually turned into a vampire a century ago before going on a murderous worldwide killing spree. To stop her rampage, the Gemini Coven trapped her in her own prison world of 1903. After Bonnie reveals Lily's location, Kai volunteers to take Damon, Elena, and Bonnie to the prison world to rescue Lily. Damon then reunites with his mother, who claims to have spent the last century in isolation reforming from her villainous ways. The group then betrays Kai, trapping him once again in the prison world as they take Lily and escape. Bonnie then gives Damon a cure for vampirism, which she had found on her quest to discover a way home. Damon tells Elena that he is willing to take the cure with her so that they can grow old together. Elena then takes the cure and becomes human once again, but before Damon can join her, all hell breaks loose. Jo warns the group that before being imprisoned by the Gemini Coven, Lily had aligned with a group of heretical witches who had siphoner powers like Kai, and Lily had turned them all into vampires. Those vampire siphoners had been trapped in the prison world with Lily, and now the Salvatore matriarch is working with Kai to bring them all back to Earth. Enzo, who had been originally turned into a vampire by Lily a century prior, remains loyal to her. At Alaric and Jo's wedding, Kai appears, having escaped the prison world once again and been turned into a vampire by Lily. He then murders Jo and attacks all of the guests, critically injuring many. In the chaos, Liv and Tyler are both mortally wounded. Not wanting them both to die, Liv forces her lover Tyler to kill her so that his werewolf gene activates once again and saves his life. Mourning his love, Tyler decides to leave Mystic Falls to forge a new path as a werewolf. Wanting revenge for being betrayed and trapped in the prison world, Kai then magically links Bonnie and Elena, cursing Elena into a coma as long as Bonnie lives. Despite everyone's fears that Damon will kill Bonnie to save his love, Damon instead murders Kai and saves Bonnie's life. Sadly, Elena will now be trapped in a coma until Bonnie dies, which everyone hopes will be of natural causes decades in the future after a long and happy life. Bonnie uses her magic to allow everyone to enter Elena's mind to say their goodbyes. For mortals like Bonnie, Matt, Tyler, and Jeremy, those goodbyes could be final. For the vampire Damon, he promises to be there for her whenever she finally wakes up. Elsewhere, with Enzo by her side, Lily Salvatore finally reunites with the vampire siphoner family she has created, known as the Heretics. In Season 3 of the originals, Klaus continues raising hope while growing closer to Camille. Marcel is busy re-strengthening his vampire community, Elijah visits Haley every full moon, Vincent is now acting as Davina's new mentor in witchcraft, and Freya is attempting to mediate the animosity between her brothers. This new normal is disturbed when the Michelson siblings learn of a prophecy that foretells all of their future deaths. The prophecy coincides with the arrival in the French Quarter of the Trinity, the first first 3 vampires ever sired by the originals. There's Lucian, who was sired by Klaus, Aurora, who was sired by Rebecca, and Aurora's overprotective brother Tristan, who was sired by Elijah. As the bloodline war comes to the French Quarter, Klaus is reunited with Aurora, who was his first great love. Centuries ago, the two fell in love, and Aurora tricked Rebecca into turning her into a vampire so she could be with Klaus for eternity. Unfortunately, the inexperienced vampire Elijah accidentally compelled Aurora to view Klaus as a monster, resulting in their breakup. Upon discovering the power of compulsion, Elijah then tricked Lucian, Tristan, and Aurora into believing that they were in fact Klaus, Elijah, and Rebecca, using them as decoys for his evil father Michael to hunt so that the real Michelson siblings could live in relative peace. In the present, Klaus discovers this revelation and becomes furious at his brother, further fracturing their relationship. Aurora then reveals to her long-lost lover Klaus the reason for the Trinity's arrival. When a vampire sire dies, their entire bloodline dies. And with the original family now down to 3 vampire members, their bloodlines have begun raging a war for supremacy to be the only bloodline left. And so the Trinity want to trap Klaus, Elijah, and Rebecca in an impenetrable supernatural prison so that no one can ever kill them, which would in turn ensure the survival of each of their bloodlines. Despite claiming to love Klaus and wanting to aid him in defeating Lucian and Tristan, when Aurora discovers Klaus's burgeoning love for Camille, she spitefully attacks Camille and turns her into a vampire. Klaus is furious over this act and professes his hatred for Aurora and his intention to enact revenge. Tristan leads a vampire brotherhood formed by Elijah known as the Strix, whose purpose originally was to bring order to the supernatural world, but is now used to simply enforce their own power and survival. Tristan's loyal vampire enforcer Aya helps recruit Marcel to join the Strix, and then kills Rebecca's mortal body, forcing her to return to her original vampire body. Rebecca is then poisoned with the Ripper virus, which would slowly drive her mad with the desire to hunt other vampires. To save her family from herself, Rebecca tasks the reluctant Elijah to dagger her, incapacitating her until Freya can find a way to reverse the curse. Meanwhile, Davina's role as regent of the covens is undermined and challenged by a faction of local witches. In response, Davina lifts the werewolf curse on Haley's pack in exchange for Haley killing Davina's witch rivals. Haley obliges, allowing her and Jackson to finally return home and raise hope together. Unfortunately, Davina's actions are discovered by the covens, and she is removed as regent. An outcast in the witch community, Davina is then recruited by the Strix's coven, who promise to help her resurrect Cole. As the war between the Michelsons and the Trinity escalates, Jackson gets caught in the middle and is tragically murdered by Tristan. Haley and the Michelsons then use the Trinity's own weapon against them, trapping Aurora in an eternal prison behind a brick wall, and trapping Tristan in an eternal prison at the bottom of the ocean, where he will be forced to drown and resurrect in an endless cycle for eternity. Stepping up in Tristan's absence, Aya tasks Davina with casting a spell that successfully breaks Klaus's sire line, meaning he can now be killed without risking the lives of his bloodline. As Aya and her strict soldiers attempt to murder Klaus, Elijah and Haley intervene to kill Aya. Meanwhile, Davina finally gains the power to resurrect Cole into his original vampire body, inadvertently resurrecting Finn alongside him. Unfortunately, Cole's resurrection is all a part of the long-dead witch ancestors' plan to enact revenge on Davina for her various actions against the Coven, and so Cole is cursed to kill his love. Aiding the ancestors is Lucian, and they help him enact a spell that turns him into an upgraded original, even more powerful than the Michelson siblings. Lucian bites Finn, who tragically dies soon after, proving that Lucian's bites are deadly and incurable to all vampires, including the originals. And to prove his evilness even further, Lucian bites Camille, who tragically dies just as her and Klaus were finally ready to pursue their love for each other. Klaus becomes inspired by Camille to become a better person who inspires his daughter. Unfortunately, Elijah and Freya only want revenge. They sacrifice Davina's soul as a conduit to channel the ancestor witches, giving Freya enough power to reverse Lucian's upgraded original powers and kill him once and for all. Marcel, Cole, and Vincent are furious about Davina's soul being destroyed, making it impossible for her to be resurrected. In turn, Vincent and Cole work together to destroy the ancestors' connection to the world of the living, and Vincent recreates Lucian's serum, giving it to Marcel to turn himself into an upgraded original to enact his own revenge against the Michelsons. As Elijah and Haley finally begin to rekindle their romance, Marcel enacts his ultimate plan for revenge. He bites Elijah and Cole and poisons Freya, meaning they would all soon die. Rebecca is woken up to try to talk down her former lover, ultimately convincing Marcel to not kill Klaus immediately, and instead put him on trial. With Marcel distracted, Freya casts a spell that links every Michelson sibling to Klaus's life force. And so, as the trial ends and Marcel sentences Klaus to an eternity of torment, the Michelson siblings are all put to sleep, kept alive by Klaus's energy. As the season comes to a close, Marcel takes back control of the city, and Vincent claims the role of regent of the Covens, though he is worried that by aiding Marcel, he has created an even bigger monster. And as Klaus begins his eternity of suffering, Haley and Hope take off in the search of the cures that will save the Michelson siblings of their various supernatural ailments. In Season 7 of the Vampire Diaries, Lily's found family of vampire witches, known as the Heretics, begin killing humans in their attempt to take over Mystic Falls for themselves. The Heretic family includes Valerie, Oscar, Nora, Mary Louise, Beau, and Malcolm. The lovers Stefan and Caroline work alongside the newly deputized Matt to save the town, evacuating all of the humans from Mystic Falls and calling for a truce with Lily and the Heretics. Unfortunately, the truce comes to a quick end when Damon and Bonnie murder the villainous Malcolm. Working alongside Lily and the Heretics is Enzo, who has always harbored a love for Lily, though he is growing concerned by her villainous actions. Lily sends Oscar off in search of the Phoenix Stone, a magical object which contains the trapped soul of Lily's long-dead vampire lover Julian. Fearing Julian's revival, Valerie murders Oscar to thwart his mission. Unfortunately, Lily and the other Heretics manage to acquire the stone and Julian's corpse, successfully placing his trapped soul back into his body. Back in 1903, the witch Valerie was a part of Lily's makeshift family and was sent to keep watch over Stefan. Instead, Valerie fell in love with Stefan and, unbeknownst to him, became pregnant with his baby. For choosing Stefan over Lily, Julian attacked Valerie and killed her baby. In her grief, Valerie chose to become a vampire, making her the first heretic hybrid. In the present, Valerie reveals her secret pregnancy and the death of their unborn child to Stefan, who vows to help her kill Julian. Lily then links her life to Julian, meaning that if Julian dies, so would she. Despite this, Damon is willing to sacrifice his evil mother to ensure Julian's death, revealing to her all of Julian's monstrous actions, including the killing of Stefan's unborn child. Finally realizing the depths of Julian's villainy, Lily turns on her lover and joins Valerie, Stefan, and Damon in the plot to kill Julian once and for all. Unfortunately, Julian still has the loyalty of the other heretics, allowing him to get the upper hand and tie up Valerie and Damon, forcing Lily to choose between saving her biological son or her adopted daughter. Lily chooses to save them both by sacrificing herself to kill the linked Julian. Unfortunately, the heretic Mary Louise, unaware of the true depths of Julian's villainy, reverses the linking spell, meaning Lily's sacrifice was for nothing. Stefan and Valerie hunt down Julian and kill him once and for all, finally avenging the death of their unborn child. Elsewhere, the grieving Alaric is informed that before their death at his wedding, the Gemini Coven magically removed the unborn twins from the dying Jo and placed them inside Caroline. Caroline eventually gives birth to Alaric and Jo's twin daughters, Josie and Lizzie. As Alaric moves to Dallas to raise his daughters away from the supernatural threats in Mystic Falls, Caroline chooses to accompany him to help raise the babies she magically birthed. With both Julian and Lily dead, the surviving heretics are left to discover who they are without their villainous leaders, and slowly try to make amends with the residents of Mystic Falls. Unfortunately, a magical huntress named Raina Cruz arrives in town to kill them all. Nearly 2 centuries ago, Raina's father was a hunter from the Brotherhood of the Five, who trained the young Reyna into becoming an expert huntress. When Julian attacked their town and killed her father, Reyna sought out a group of shamans to give her increased strength, immortality, and the magical Phoenix Sword, which Reyna used to kill Julian and trap him in the Phoenix Stone back in 1903. And now in the present, with Julian dead, Reyna has arrived in Mystic Falls to kill his heretic family and all of the town's vampire inhabitants. Reyna kills Beau and fights Damon, but before she can kill him, Stefan intervenes, resulting in him being stabbed by the Phoenix Sword, giving him the Hunter's Mark of Death. Damon and Bonnie search for a way to defeat Reyna and save Stefan, and are eventually offered help from Enzo, who is now working for a group known as the Armory. The Armory is a group that specializes in obtaining and containing supernatural knowledge and artifacts, and was originally founded by Enzo's father centuries prior, but is now led by Enzo's cousin Alex. As Valerie warns Damon that the Armory can't be trusted, the mysterious group finds and captures Nora and Mary Louise. To save Stefan from the Hunter's Mark, Damon finds Reyna and begins repeatedly killing her, but each time she is resurrected like a phoenix. Enzo reveals to Bonnie that with every resurrection, one of the shamans that empowered Reyna dies, and now only one shaman remains, meaning Reyna is on her final life, and if she dies permanently, so will all of those cursed with the Hunter's Mark. And so, Damon spares Reyna, allowing the Armory to capture and contain her. Damon realizes that his actions always lead to those he loves most getting hurt, so he decides to desiccate himself and sleep for the next several decades until Elena reawakens, despite Stefan's heartbroken protests. Stefan then travels to Dallas to reunite with Caroline, but after seeing her and her seemingly happy new family with Alaric and the twins, decides to be with Valerie instead. 3 years later, Reyna has escaped the Armory and will stop at nothing to kill the marked Stefan. A reluctant Stefan wakes up Damon earlier than intended to seek his help. Damon quickly discovers that a lot has changed in his absence. Stefan and Valerie rekindled their romance and traveled the country together. Alaric and Bonnie both hate Damon for abandoning them without saying goodbye. Alaric is now engaged to Caroline and happily raising their twins away from the supernatural chaos. Bonnie is now in love with Enzo and has been taking Reyna's blood, secretly given to her by Enzo via his connection to the Armory, to suppress her magic and stop the Armory from finding her. The Armory wants to capture Bonnie and force her to open a mysterious magically sealed door that only a Bennett witch can open. Meanwhile, Mary Louise and Nora have remained imprisoned by the Armory, with Mary Louise subjected to experiments with Reyna's blood. They soon realize that the blood is deadly to witches. With her death imminent, Mary Louise and Nora decide to sacrifice themselves to destroy the Phoenix Stone, which releases all of the trapped vampire souls from inside it. When Bonnie discovers that Reyna's blood will soon kill her, all of her friends, including Damon, Enzo, Stefan, Caroline, Matt, and Alaric, make a deal with Reyna to kill all of the released souls, in exchange for Reyna transferring her final life to Bonnie. Unfortunately, there are too many souls to kill and too little time, and so Damon turns to Alex to make a deal with the Armory to finish off the remainder of the vampires, in exchange for Bonnie opening their mysterious vault. Bonnie opens the vault, but then betrays the Armory and seals them all inside. Reyna fulfills her promise and gives her final life to Bonnie, which also transfers over her curse to hate and hunt vampires. Damon and Enzo realize that the only way to lift Bonnie's curse is to kill the final shaman, but to do so they would need to reopen the Armory. Alaric and Caroline use their infant twins to siphon the magical seal and open the Armory. Enzo distracts his curse love Bonnie, and Damon enters the mysterious vault to kill the shaman, lifting Bonnie's curse. As everyone celebrates, Valerie and Alaric both realize that Stefan and Caroline belong together, and give their blessings to the former lovers to rekindle their romance. Unfortunately, Damon is called away from the celebration by Elena's voice inside the vault. As Enzo races into the vault to stop his friend from following the voice, he and Damon are overpowered by a mysterious threat. In Season 8 of The Vampire Diaries, several months have passed, and Damon and Enzo have gone on a killing spree while serving the villainous monster from the vault, the Siren Sybil, who must feed on humans to remain young and beautiful. Damon has turned off his humanity humanity to cope with the atrocities he is forced to commit for Sybil, while Enzo begins leaving clues for his love Bonnie, in the hopes that she can find a way to save him. Meanwhile, Alaric has become the new leader of the Armory, with the intention of bringing its purpose back to safely studying and collecting supernatural artifacts. He and Caroline hire a nanny named Celine to watch their daughters, Josie and Lizzie, but unfortunately, Celine is secretly Sybil's siren sister. Centuries ago, the young Celine and Sybil were abandoned by their villages on a deserted island, due to fear of their burgeoning psychic powers. Sybil tried to be good, but Celine began causing ships to crash onto the island so she could feed on the sailors, and forced Sybil into doing the same. The girls were then visited by Arcadius, the world's first psychic, who after being burned alive, created hell and became the literal devil. Arcadius offered the sirens eternal life and beauty if they served him, and so they've been doing his devilish bidding ever since. On orders from Arcadius, Sybil sends Damon on a mission to retrieve a church bell originally forged by Matt's ancestors centuries prior. As Damon finds and attacks Matt's long-lost father, Peter Maxwell, Matt steps in to thwart Damon. When Tyler returns to town to help convince Damon to turn his humanity back on, Damon instead turns fully evil and kills him. Celine then kidnaps Josie and Lizzie, offering to trade them to Arcadius as his new servants, in exchange for Celine and Sybil's freedom. Before Arcadius can accept the offer, Stefan and Damon intervene, offering themselves to serve instead, in an act to both save Josie and Lizzie, and also atone for the many sins they've committed as vampires. Arcadius tells Stefan that he wants him to corrupt good people and bring him those souls to feed on, because they are the most potent. Stefan turns off his humanity and agrees to do all of Arcadius's worst bidding, in exchange for he and Damon being released from their devilish contract in 1 year. Sybil then forces Damon to turn back on his humanity, forcing him to suffer from the guilt of all of his recent atrocities. And with no more use for the sirens, Arcadius kills both Sybil and Celine. In addition to hunting human souls, Arcadius also wants to bring literal hell to Earth, and to do so, a Maxwell descendant must ring their family bell 12 times. The humanityless Stefan captures Matt and forces him to begin ringing the bell, but on the 11th ring, Damon arrives to intervene, saving Matt and all of Mystic Falls from an eruption of hellfire. Stefan wants Damon to turn his humanity back off and join him as a willing servant of Arcadius, and so he devises a plan to find Elena's comatose body and murder her, destroying Damon's only reason to remain good. Meanwhile, Enzo wants to extract the cure from Elena's blood so that he can become human and spend the rest of his life with Bonnie. As Stefan attacks Elena, Enzo and Bonnie attempt to stop him. Stefan murders Enzo, but Bonnie manages to inject Stefan with the cure. Stefan becomes a human, with his humanity back intact, while a heartbroken Bonnie lets out a burst of magic so powerful, it creates a new world to store Enzo's soul. Despite the bell only being rung 11 times, the rift to hell is open long enough for the villainous Kai to slip through and return to Mystic Falls. As Kai attacks Josie and Lizzie, attempting to siphon their magic, Alaric and Caroline intervene, defeating Kai once again. Bonnie uses her newfound abilities to create a new prison world to trap Kai in permanently. While searching for a way to defeat Arcadius, the group discovers that only a bone dagger can kill a spirit from hell. Unfortunately, after retrieving the dagger, Arcadius manages to capture both the newly human Stefan and the comatose body of Elena, forcing Damon to choose which one to save. Damon refuses to let either his brother or his lover die, and instead chooses to sacrifice himself. As Arcadius attempts to collect Damon's soul for hell, Bonnie shows up to fight him long enough for Stefan to kill Arcadius with the bone dagger. Arcadius's death results in Damon's soul being restored to his body. With Arcadius dead and the town seemingly saved from hell, everyone happily celebrates at the wedding of Stefan and Caroline. Unfortunately, in Arcadius's absence, Katherine has become the ruler of hell and returns to Mystic Falls to finish what Arcadius started. Katherine has brought Vicki Donovan with her from hell and tasked the Maxwell descendant to begin ringing the bell. Matt tries in vain to convince his long-dead sister to stop, but she refuses. Knowing the town town would soon be destroyed by the arrival of hell on Earth, Caroline is forced to bid Stefan an emotional goodbye and flee town with Alaric and their daughters. Bonnie discovers that she can harness the massive power of hellfire and direct it back into hell, which would permanently destroy it. Damon captures Katherine and prepares to sacrifice himself by dragging her back to hell so that she would be killed in its destruction. Stefan arrives to sacrifice himself in Damon's place, insisting that he has spent centuries trying to turn his brother into a good man, and now that Damon has been fully redeemed, it's time for him to live the life he deserves. Damon resists his brother's pleas and uses his vampire powers to compel Stefan to leave. Instead, Stefan manages to inject Damon with his blood, which contains the cure to vampirism, turning Damon into a human. As Vicki rings the bell for a 12th time, hellfire unleashes into Mystic Falls, which Bonnie redirects back into hell itself. Damon is left helpless as Stefan sacrifices himself to kill Katherine in the destruction of hell. Stefan then moves on peacefully to the afterlife, but not before visiting the mind of Elena to say one final goodbye. Bonnie, now more powerful than ever, is able to break the spell on Elena and finally wake her. As everyone mourns Stefan, the lovers Damon and Elena are finally reunited, now both as humans. Bonnie departs her hometown to travel the world, the spirit of her lover Enzo always watching over her. The new sheriff of Mystic Falls, Matt Donovan, decides to run for mayor. Alaric and Caroline, inspired by their magical daughters, decide to open the Salvatore boarding school for the young and gifted, to train up the next generation of supernatural heroes. Damon and Elena live a long and happy life together as humans, and after dying peacefully together in their old age, they move on to a happy afterlife, where Elena is greeted by her family and Damon and Stefan lovingly reunite. In Season 4 of the originals, 5 years have passed and Marcel and Vincent have created peace in the French Quarter between the vampires and witches. Elsewhere, Haley and her growing child Hope finally complete their mission, saving Elijah, Rebecca, Freya, and Cole. The newly reawakened Michelson siblings then return to the French Quarter to save Klaus from Marcel's imprisonment. After the successful rescue mission, Klaus is reunited with his now 7-year-old daughter, while Cole and Rebecca decide to leave town once again to live their lives in peace. Despite the Michelsons now being reunited and free, Marcel still forbids them from living in the French Quarter. Freya begins working with the werewolf Keelan to find a cure for Marcel's deadly upgraded original powers so that they can kill him. All the while, Freya and Keelan begin to fall in love. Dark magic sigils then begin to appear all throughout the city. Vincent recognizes them from the dark magic he and his ex-wife Eva had previously studied, which led to Eva going mad and conducting child sacrifices. And now, children have started going missing once again, leaving Vincent feeling responsible for bringing this evil to the French Quarter. When Hope becomes targeted by this evil, Marcel reluctantly agrees to put aside his differences with the Michelsons to work together to defeat the magic plaguing the city. The evil terrorizing the town is a mysterious spirit known as the Hollow. It possesses both Klaus and Marcel, pressuring them to kill each other, in the hopes of absorbing their power to be reborn into a physical body. But the centuries of found familial bond between the two give them the strength to resist the Hollow's power and rid the spirit from themselves. The two men then reconcile, with Klaus affirming to Marcel that he will always be a true member of the Michelson family. The Hollow then possesses Sophia, Marcel's trusted vampire ally and friend with benefits. The possessed Sophia leads Loyalist of the Hollow in collecting 4 bone artifacts that are needed to resurrect the Hollow's human form. Fearing for his family's safety, Elijah coldly sacrifices 4 young witches and forces Vincent to perform the harvest ritual in an effort to reconnect with the ancestors and seek their help in defeating the Hollow. Vincent completes the ritual and the spirit of Davina arrives to aid the group. She informs them that centuries ago, rival witch tribes wanted to form a unified coven, and so they married a man and woman from their opposing groups. That couple gave birth to a powerful witch baby, the Hollow, who sought power at any cost, including slaughtering many witches in the coven. The surviving witches, including the child's parents, were forced to kill the Hollow to save themselves. As the Hollow died, it cast a spell binding all of its killers to the full moon, meaning the Hollow is in fact the creator of the original original werewolf curse, and because Haley and Hope are from this bloodline, their blood can be used to defeat the evil spirit. The Hollow possessed Sophia then poisons and kidnaps Elijah, ransoming him for the remaining bone artifacts. Marcel reluctantly trades the bones in exchange for the Hollow leaving Sophia's body. Elijah tragically dies from the Hollow's poison, and his death gives the Hollow the power to be reborn into a physical body. And with Elijah's death, his entire sire line also begins to die. Following Elijah's tragic death, Rebecca and Cole return to help their remaining siblings defeat the Hollow in one final battle. The Hollow then fully resurrects Davina in exchange for Cole acting as her loyal servant. As everyone teams up against the Hollow and Cole, Haley and Hope successfully use their werewolf blood to kill the evil spirit, while Freya finds a way to resurrect Elijah. Klaus decides to spare the life of his traitorous brother Cole, knowing he would have been tempted to join the Hollow if it meant being reunited with Camille. With the Hollow defeated, Haley contemplates leaving Elijah for the violent things he's done to save his family. Unfortunately, the Hollow spirit has survived and possesses its most powerful host yet, Hope. To save Hope, Vincent crafts a spell that will put pieces of the Hollow in Klaus, Elijah, Rebecca, and Cole. But to ensure the Hollow never reforms, they will all be forced to separate and never see each other again. And to ensure the Hollow doesn't try to repossess the powerful witch Hope, they must also stay away from the youngest and most loved member of their family. The Michelson family all share emotional goodbyes, most tragically Klaus with Hope, as the original won't be around to love and protect his daughter as she grows up. And so, as the season comes to a close, Vincent and Freya cast the spell, and the Michelson siblings part ways. Cole and the newly resurrected Davina leave the city to start their new lives together, while Rebecca and Marcel romantically reunite. Knowing that being apart from his family will be too difficult to bear, Elijah asks Marcel to compel him into forgetting his siblings. In season 5 of the originals, 7 years have passed since the Michelson siblings were forced to separate. Klaus is on a killing spree in France, murdering all of Elijah's enemies before they can enact revenge on the unsuspecting, memoryless original. Freya and Keelan are still happily in love, Cole and Davina are now married, and Marcel has left the French Quarter to be with Rebecca. But when she rejects his marriage proposal, the upgraded original returns to his home in New Orleans. In Marcel's absence, Vincent has kept the peace amongst the disparate supernatural factions, forging an alliance between the werewolves led by Haley, the vampires led by Josh, and the witches led by Freya. With her true love Elijah memoryless and out of her life, Haley has begun a relationship with Camille's oblivious human cousin Declan. Elsewhere, Hope is now a rebellious teenager attending the supernatural Salvatore school for the young and gifted. She has a crush on her bad boy vampire classmate Roman, but after selling her blood to another classmate so they can turn themselves into a hybrid, Hope is suspended from school and forced to return to her mother. When Haley goes missing, Hope calls her father and pleads for him to finally return home. Klaus's return to the French Quarter is fraught with familial tension, as Hope feels rejected and abandoned by her father, while Klaus insists he believes she'd be better off without a monster like him in her life. Hope then admits that she kidnapped her own mother to force Klaus into returning home. As Klaus goes to rescue Haley, he discovers that someone else has already captured her from Hope's prison. Shortly after, Hope's hybrid classmate is found murdered in the street. Klaus soon realizes that the person responsible is a vampire named Greta Sienna. Greta is the widow of August Muller, a Nazi vampire that Klaus had killed in the 1930s. Greta has amassed an army of vampires known as Nightwalkers, who seek to retain a pure vampire bloodline, and thus want to eradicate all hybrids. Klaus seeks Elijah's help, but the elder Michelson sibling refuses to return home to the family he has forgotten, choosing to instead continue living his new life with his new fiancée, Antoinette. Unfortunately, Antoinette is in fact the daughter of Greta, while Hope's school crush Roman is Greta's son. Greta tricks Elijah to accompany Antoinette in returning to the French Quarter to defeat Klaus and the rest of the Michelson family. As Klaus fights Elijah in an effort to rescue Haley, Haley chooses to sacrifice herself to kill Greta in the hopes of preventing her anti-hybrid crusade from coming after Hope. As Haley is mourned by the town, Klaus comforts Hope through the tragic loss. Klaus then helps Elijah restore his memories, leading to the elder Michelson emotionally breaking down as he realizes that he stood by as his true love Haley died in front of him. With the Hollow-possessed Michelson siblings starting to reunite, ominous supernatural events like withering flowers and raining blood begin to occur. To prevent further events and avert the potential destruction of the entire town, Hope goes against her family's wishes and absorbs all of the Hollow back into herself. The Michelson siblings are now free to be together, but Hope is now the host of an evil spirit who compels her to do terrible things. Hope discovers that the only way to quiet the evil voice of the Hollow is to inflict violence on others, which her father Klaus happens to be an expert at. Klaus then becomes Hope's mentor, even going as far as teaching Hope how to torture her former crush Roman. Unfortunately, the death of Greta doesn't stop the mission of her Nightwalker army. They wage a war for control of the city, killing witches, including Vincent's burgeoning love Ivy. Next, the Nightwalkers capture Marcel and extract his blood, which is lethal to all other vampires and hybrids. Tragically, the Nightwalkers use the blood to kill Marcel's most loyal friend Josh, who then finds peace in the afterlife with his lover Aiden. In an act of repentance, Antoinette helps Elijah round up the Nightwalkers and lead them into a trap, where Hope brutally murders them all to calm the Hollow. As Antoinette and Roman leave the French Quarter, everyone starts to settle back into their normal lives. Freya and Keelan get married in front of their family and friends. Declan discovers the truth about the supernatural beings of the French Quarter and steps up as the leader of the benevolent human faction, and Elijah reads a letter from Haley that allows him to begin to forgive himself for her death and take back on his mantle as the Michelson family's fiercest protector. Unfortunately, the family discovers that the Hollow spirit would soon overwhelm and kill Hope. Klaus and Elijah take Hope back to the Salvatore school, where Klaus seeks the assistance of its co-founder, his former vampire love Caroline. Caroline's twin daughters are magical siphoners, who can siphon the Hollow out of Hope and place it in Klaus. As Klaus prepares to sacrifice himself to kill the Hollow once and for all, he shares an emotional farewell with his entire family. As the series comes to a close, Freya and Keelan ask Vincent to be the father of their baby. Rebecca and Marcel reunite and she finally accepts his marriage proposal, and Klaus takes comfort knowing that his daughter Hope will be taken care of by his family. As Klaus prepares to sacrifice himself, Elijah chooses to die at his brother's side. The Michelsons had long promised each other always and forever, and for Klaus and Elijah, that included death. Klaus has fully redeemed himself as the hero of his story, so Elijah's ultimate mission has been completed. And so the brothers die together, searching for much-needed peace and rest together in the afterlife. In Season 1 of Legacies, Hope Michelson starts another year attending the supernatural Salvatore School for the Young and Gifted. There, she trains under the human headmaster Alaric Saltzman. Hope is still struggling with grief over the loss of her parents, and pushes away any friendships with her fellow classmates. Alaric's twin witch daughters Lizzie and Josie are fellow students at the school, but they feel overlooked by their father due to his constant mentorship of Hope. Lizzie is a typical popular mean girl who often targets her aggression toward Hope, while Josie is a genius who often allows her twin to take center stage. Hope and Alaric recruit a new werewolf Raphael to join the school, but his foster brother Landon isn't allowed to join him as he is a human. Hope and Landon quickly develop romantic feelings for each other and share a kiss before Landon is forced to return home. As he leaves, his bus bursts into flames and kills everyone on board, and Landon goes missing. Mystic Falls Sheriff Matt Donovan knows that something supernatural is responsible and tasks Alaric with uncovering the truth. Alaric, Hope, and Raphael find and save Landon, who reveals that it was actually a dragon that destroyed the bus. The group defeats the dragon and returns to the school, where Landon is allowed to stay despite being human, though Hope grows suspicious of him and how he managed to survive the bus incident. Alaric then allows the students to elect representatives for their own student council. Josie is elected head of the witches, Caleb is elected head of the vampires, and Raphael is head of the werewolves. Hope helps orchestrate Josie and Caleb voting to expel Landon from the school, which devastates Raphael. He turns to Lizzie for comfort and the two sleep together, but Raphael later admits to Lizzie that he regrets it, as he has stronger feelings for her sister Josie. Despite expelling Landon from the school, Hope can't help her romantic feelings for him and gives him a kiss goodbye, encouraging him to find his birth mother. Landon finds his mother Sayla and discovers that she was once a human agent agent for the organization Triad Industries, whose mission was to keep the truth of the supernatural world a secret from the human population. Sayla was absorbed by the dark magic entity Malivore, and upon her reemergence, she had become magically pregnant with Landon. Sayla sacrifices herself to Malivore to save her son, who returns to the Salvatore school and officially begins dating Hope, who resolves with Alaric to defeat the dark magic creature. Meanwhile, Raphael develops his own romantic feelings for Hope, straining his relationship with his foster brother Landon. Elsewhere, Alaric's vampire student aide MG Ghost revealed to his father that he is a vampire, but his father doesn't accept him. Devastated, MG begins to spiral and lose control of his bloodlust, leading to him killing Landon. As everyone goes to mourn and collect Landon's body, he rises from its ashes and reveals that he is a phoenix, a supernatural being that can resurrect themselves. Lizzie and Josie then learn that they are Gemini twins, and on their 22nd birthday they will be forced to complete a merge ritual, where only one will survive and absorb the power of the other. The sisters are devastated by this revelation, and even more upset that their parents have kept this a secret from them for so long. Josie then reveals that she is accidentally the reason that Lizzie has long hated Hope, as Josie started a rumor to cover up her romantic feelings for Hope. With this secret revealed, Josie and Lizzie reconcile with Hope, who finally allows herself to push past her grief and develop deeper friendships. As the season comes to a close, Landon is kidnapped by Triad agent Nick Clark. Landon learns that humans used to be under constant attack by various supernatural beings, so a witch, werewolf, and vampire work together to create a magical golem known as Malivore that could absorb all other supernatural beings. Malivore then tried to fight back against the triad of witches, werewolves, and vampires by creating a golem army. One of those creations was Clark and another Landon, making the pair half-brothers. Humans formed Triad Industries to capture supernatural beings and feed them to Malivore. The Triad wants to collect artifacts stored at the Salvatore school to empower Malivore and increase its strength. As the Triad attack the school, the students realize that a dark magic fountain is blocking their magical abilities, making the fight seemingly unwinnable. Alaric turns off the fountain and teams up with his students to defeat the Triad at the school, while Hope goes to rescue Landon from Clark, realizing that because she has the tribrid blood of a witch, werewolf, and vampire, that she is the key to defeating Malivore. Hope sacrifices herself and forces Clark to join her, and so Malivore is defeated, but Hope is erased from existence, leaving all of the new friends and family she has made unaware that she ever even existed. Alaric admits to the school he brought the dark magic fountain as a safety measure to protect the human world from his supernatural students should they turn evil. Alaric apologizes for not believing in them and allows the student council to hold a vote to oust him as headmaster. In Season 2 of Legacies, Hope realizes that she has failed at defeating Malivore and leaves its pit to return to a life that has forgotten her. She is heartbroken to discover that in her absence, Landon and Josie have begun to date. Looking to start a new life, Hope decides to not return to the Salvatore school and instead attend Mystic Falls High alongside humans. But that new life is threatened when Ryan Clark convinces Malivore to allow him to temporarily escape its clutches to find and kill Hope once and for all. As the recently fired Alaric takes over as principal of Mystic Falls High, the Salvatore school names Professor Vardamus as its new headmaster. Vardamus wants the supernatural residents of Mystic Falls to live openly and encourages the students to use magic outside of school grounds. He even instructs Josie on the use of dark magic, helping her use an object known as a Mora Miserium to absorb any darkness that forms in her due to the dangerous magic's usage. Unfortunately, this leads to Josie having visions of the Mora Miserium breaking, all of its dark magic being released, and the Salvatore school being destroyed by Josie's own turn to darkness. Elsewhere, Lizzie meets a mysterious new vampire at the school named Sebastian, and the two begin to date. Alaric doesn't trust his daughter's new boyfriend and orchestrates his disappearance before telling Lizzie that Sebastian chose to leave on his own accord. Alaric, meanwhile, becomes the object of desire for Mystic Falls' new sheriff, Mac, who replaced Matt Donovan after he was elected the town's mayor. Mac has two teenagers, Ethan and Maya, and Ethan fights with Raphael over their shared attraction to Hope. Josie then seeks out the help of Hope's aunt, Freya Michelson, now raising her son Nick with her wife Keelan, to create a spell that would restore everyone's memories. The spell works, and Hope is finally remembered by her family and friends, leading Landon to make the difficult decision of breaking up with Josie to return to his true love, Hope. Professor Vardamus then reveals himself to be a magically disguised Ryan Clark. Clark attempts to kill Hope and take over her body, allowing him to permanently leave Malivore, but he is defeated and killed by another escaped creature from Malivore, the Necromancer. The Necromancer grows powerful enough to release various supernatural creatures that had been previously absorbed by Malivore, and instead force them into doing his bidding. Alaric then resumes his role as headmaster of Salvatore's school, and works with his students to find a way to defeat their newest threat. The Necromancer wants to steal the Mora Miserium from Josie and harness the power of its dark magic. And to prevent that, Lizzie devises a plan to transport the object into a magically created prison world. Unfortunately, the witch student Alyssa regains memories of her past that Alaric had erased. When she was a child, Alyssa lost control of her powers and accidentally killed her parents. Alaric contemplated sending her to the prison world, but instead wiped her memory and allowed her to attend the Salvatore school to learn to control her powers. And so, after regaining her memories, the spiteful Alyssa cast a spell that sends Alaric and his daughters to the prison world alongside the Mora Miserium. While trapped there, Lizzie discovers that her father had also imprisoned her vampire boyfriend Sebastian. The group are confronted by Kai Parker, the evil vampire uncle of Josie and Lizzie, who has been imprisoned here for many years. Kai is assisted by Malivore in returning to the real world to wreak havoc on the Salvatore school. To escape the prison world, Josie is forced to break the Mora Miserium and absorb its dark magic, giving her the power to bring her family home. Unfortunately, someone must stay behind to act as an anchor. Sebastian volunteers, proving his true intentions to Alaric. The Saltzman family return home, where Alaric kills Kai once and for all. Unfortunately, after breaking the Mora Miserium, Josie is now Dark Josie, who teams up with the Necromancer and blows up half the school. Dark Josie then declares that she wants to complete the merge ritual with Lizzie early to absorb her power. Hope helps Lizzie link her life to Landon's so that when Josie wins the merge and Lizzie is killed, she is resurrected by Landon's Phoenix powers. Unfortunately, the Necromancer has plans of his own and begins killing Salvatore school students, including Alyssa and Raphael, resurrecting them as zombies to do his bidding. Raphael then kills Landon with a golden arrow that prevents his resurrection. Hope goes into Josie's mind and helps her defeat the darkness, while Alaric makes a deal with the Necromancer, allowing him to absorb the darkness in exchange for the revival of all of the Necromancer's victims. Unfortunately, as the students are revived, Hope and Landon somehow fail to wake up. In Season 3 of Legacies, the Necromancer resurrects Landon, but the Golden Arrow has permanently removed his Phoenix powers. In turn, Landon is able to wake up Hope with a kiss. When the Necromancer is stopped from absorbing Josie's dark magic, as Alaric had promised, he revokes his deal and ensures his resurrected zombies will all die for good. Alyssa pledges her allegiance to the Necromancer, who spares her life, while Raphael evades death by being sent to a prison world of his own, joined by his long-lost biological parents, where they can spend an eternity together making up for their lost time. To defeat their newest villain, Landon reluctantly teams up with Malivore, who has been depowered and forced into servitude by the Necromancer. Landon allows his father to possess and empower him, and teams up with Hope to successfully trap the Necromancer and Malivore in the prison world, where Malivore regains his power and prepares to spend an eternity enacting his revenge on his only available prey. Unfortunately, despite this victory, Landon disappears, leaving Hope no idea of where he is or how to save him. Josie has become an outcast due to her actions as Dark Josie, and decides to leave the Salvatore school to attend Mystic Falls High. MG feels like he doesn't get the respect he deserves from his fellow classmates and chooses to follow Josie there. At Mystic Falls High, MG forms a strong friendship with Ethan, while Josie strikes up a romantic relationship with Finch, who soon reveals that she is in fact a werewolf, transferring to the Salvatore school and joining the Wolf Pack, headed by new Alpha Jed. Back at Salvatore, Hope helps welcome in a new student, Cleo, who is her new witch roommate. When Hope discovers that Landon is trapped in the prison world with Malivore and the Necromancer, Alaric warns that trying to save him may risk releasing Malivore once again. Hope ignores Alaric's warning and successfully saves her boyfriend. Malivore then begins sending its formerly consumed monsters to hunt down Cleo, as she is a magical muse that may help him gain the inspiration inspiration needed to escape the prison world. Hope and her friends save Cleo, who then begins dating Caleb. Hope then notices that Landon is behaving strangely since his return from the prison world, leading her to discover that he is not the real Landon, but a golem created by Malivore to manipulate her. Cleo then reveals that she has been controlling the Landon golem, as she has been forced into servitude by Malivore for centuries after giving herself over to the evil entity to protect the people of her village. Despite being forced to serve Malivore, Cleo has been searching for a way to kill him so that she can be free of his control. The real Landon returns but breaks up with Hope, fearing that their constant battle with Malivore will only lead to them destroying each other. Landon then teams up with Cleo, who gives him the magical inspiration needed to defeat his father. Unfortunately, this is also not the real Landon, but actually Malivore, using Landon's body as a vessel, who consumes Cleo and absorbs her power, just as he had done to his son. As the season comes to a close, Ryan Clark is magically resurrected and repents of his villainy, joining Hope's mission to defeat Malivore. Everyone bands together to capture Malivore and lock him inside a prison at the Salvatore school, vowing to stop at nothing to defeat the evil being once and for all and rescue the friends that he has consumed. In Season 4 of Legacies, Malivore escapes the Salvatore school prison and magically compels Ethan and Caleb into becoming mindless drones to do his bidding. As Malivore enacts violent destruction upon the school and the town, Hope decides to finally activate the tribrid powers that she has long left dormant, making her the most powerful supernatural being in the world. Hope has long resisted accessing her full power, fearing it will lead her to committing villainous acts similar to her father. Freya assists Hope in dying to trigger her dormant vampire and werewolf genes. As Josie helps Cleo escape Malivore, Hope uses her combined vampire, werewolf, and witch powers to kill the evil entity, knowing that it would tragically also mean the death of her beloved Landon. Following Malivore's death, Ethan and Caleb are released from his mind control and are each left with new magical abilities. Ethan begins dating Lizzie, while his best friend MG helps him learn to control his newfound abilities. Unfortunately, Ethan's powers begin to kill him the more he uses them, giving him a very finite lifespan. Knowing impending death is inevitable, Ethan encourages his best friend MG to pursue his love for Lizzie. Meanwhile, Josie decides that with Malivore defeated, it was finally time to leave the school and Mystic Falls for good, setting off on her own adventure. Devastated at being forced to kill her own boyfriend, Hope chooses to turn off her humanity, leaving her devoid of any emotions. The humanityless Hope mortally wounds Alaric, putting him in a coma, and attempts to recruit Clark to her newfound villainy. But Clark maintains his newfound redemption, choosing instead to live a human life in peace with his new girlfriend. As Hope's friends all search for a way to restore Hope's humanity, Lizzie begins to reluctantly search for a backup plan, crafting the only weapon that can kill a tribrid, a red oak stake. When Lizzie confronts Hope, she can't bring herself to kill her friend. Instead, the humanityless Hope murders Lizzie, who had secretly planned for this outcome by drinking vampire blood. And so, Lizzie is resurrected as a vampire witch hybrid known as a heretic, who is forced to be loyal to her vampire sire, Hope. The original witch, werewolf, and vampire that formed the triad believe that in Malivore's absence, Hope is the new greatest threat to humanity, and so Hope sets off on a mission to kill the original triad before they can kill her. Hope kills the witch and werewolf before she and Lizzie discover that the triad vampire is none other than Aurora de Martel, an evil villainess who was recently released from an eternal prison that Hope's father Klaus had trapped her in before his death. Aurora's plan to defeat Hope involves waking up the long slumbering gods, including their leader Kin. Kin and his fellow gods put themselves into a deep sleep following the creation of Malivore, ensuring there was no chance that the evil entity could consume them and make the world forget them, as their power is derived from belief. The newly reawakened Kin offers for Aurora to serve by his side as a new godly power couple, with their first mission together to kill Hope, as her new title of most powerful being on Earth is a threat to Kin's own godly claims. Kin's half-god son Ben arrives at the Salvatore school to help them fight his father. Centuries ago, after his human boyfriend fell ill, Ben sought his father's help in healing him. When Kin refused, a distraught Ben stole power from the gods and came to Earth. And although that power failed to save Ben's boyfriend, it was the event that inadvertently first brought magic to Earth. As Ben aligns with the Salvatore school, he meets and falls in love with the werewolf Jed. Meanwhile, in the limbo realm between life and and death, the newly dead Landon encounters Ted, the reformed original human version of the Necromancer. As the duo prepare to journey into the peace of the afterlife, they are stopped by Alaric, who helps them steal the boat of the ferryman, a supernatural being who helps lead souls to peace. The trio then seek out a genie who successfully sends Alaric's spirit back to his body on Earth, though Landon and Ted are forced to stay behind. In an effort to restore Hope's humanity, her friends send her back to New Orleans, where Rebecca, Freya, Cole, and Marcel are holding a memorial for her father Klaus. Hope's family and the memories of her father finally help her turn her humanity back on, returning to the Salvatore school with a renewed sense of purpose. Ken arrives and battles Hope, defeating her and sending her spirit to Limbo, where she reunites with Landon. Hope tries to stay in Limbo to search for a way to bring Landon back to life, but he refuses, knowing that Hope needed to return to Earth to help her friends defeat Ken. And so Hope and Landon share a final emotional farewell. Landon sends Hope back to the land of the living while he stays behind and takes over as the new ferryman, guiding souls to find their ultimate peace in the afterlife. His first soul guided to peace is his unlikely new friend Ted. With Hope being resurrected, Ken and Aurora become even more ruthless in killing her. They lead a final assault on the school that turns into an all-out war. Ken kills Caleb and then magically forces all of the werewolf students to transform, turning friends against friends. Alaric is forced to kill Jed in self-defense, while MG dies locking up the werewolves to avoid any further violence. When Hope shows Aurora mercy in battle, Aurora realizes the error of her ways and chooses to sacrifice herself to save Hope from Ken's attack. Lizzie then siphons Ken's power and uses it to blow him up. Ethan uses the last of his power to teleport Lizzie to safety before finally dying. In Limbo, Landon uses his new ferryman power to resurrect Caleb, Jed, and MG, who arrive back on Earth to help all of their friends kill Ken once and for all. Following Ken's death, his son Ben becomes a mortal human. Jed's own resurrection has reset his werewolf curse, making him a human, allowing the lovers to live mortal lives together. Alaric chooses to leave the Salvatore school to write a book on all of the supernatural creatures he has encountered, so the world can finally one day learn the truth of his heroic friends. As Alaric departs, Hope bids her surrogate second father an emotional farewell. Cleo has a vision of herself taking over as headmaster in the future, but for now, Caroline returns to reunite with Lizzie and lead the school in Alaric's absence. After guiding Ethan to peace, Landon briefly returns to Earth to help Hope spread Klaus's ashes, bringing a message her father sent from the afterlife to encourage her as she continues to move on with her life. As the series comes to a close, Hope joins Caroline in welcoming a new class of students to the Salvatore School, a place where the supernatural outcasts can finally feel welcome and at home.